Untethered. Untethered is a compare and contrast example of non-fiction informational text. Now, we are going to use our strategies, and our first strategy is to take a peek at the text. And if I take a peek at the text, if I preview it, I notice that there is a photo with the caption, and the caption says, Museum display of an untethered astronaut using an MMU. Now my second strategy, go back and read the text all the way through. Untethered. How would you like to fly through outer space? Among the many treasures on display at the National Air and Space Museum is a 300-pound contraption that enabled a few lucky astronauts to do just that. That unique device is called a Manned Maneuvering Unit, MMU. It was so irresistible that, while no longer in use today, it reappeared in a recent science fiction film. A MMU is a backpack powered by compressed nitrogen and controlled by handles mounted on armrests. In February 1984, Bruce McCandless and Bob Stewart became the first astronauts to try it out. The MMU was an exciting new means of space travel, but it was not a fast one. In marked contrast to the wildly unrealistic velocity at which actor George Clooney raced through space using his MMU in the movie Gravity, actual MMUs launched along at a snail's pace. NASA never would have allowed Clooney such frivolous cavorting in space. For one thing, compressed nitrogen is not an efficient fuel source. Clooney would have run out of it while joking and listening to music on his joyride. Real astronauts had to conserve precious fuel. For another, actual MMUs were hard to steer. Meanwhile, the astronaut played by Sandra Bullock worked outside the shuttle on a delicate repair, as real astronauts are trained to do. Like them, she moved very deliberately. It was all work and no play. Although satellite repairs are still necessary, by 1986, NASA eliminated spacewalking as a technique. More advanced shuttles could get astronauts close enough to objects in order to grab them by hand. This technology improvements rendered MMUs obsolete. Astronauts no longer use them. Only actors do, and only in the movies. So now we have little directions right here. It says box the signal words. So, considering that this is a compare and contrast text, let us look for some signal words. Let's look at the first paragraph. How would you like to fly unattached through outer space? Among the many treasures on display at the National Air and Space Museum is a 300-pound contraption that enabled a few lucky astronauts to do just that. That unique device is called a Manned Maneuvering Unit. It was also so irresistible, while no longer in use today, it reappeared in a science film. Well, I don't see any good ones there. Now, I want you to look at the second paragraph, pause the video, and come back and see if you can find, or if we can compare the ones you found and the ones I found. So go ahead and pause it and look for yours. Okay, so in paragraph 2, I found but in marked contrast. Paragraph 3, I found for one thing and for another. And paragraph 4, I found meanwhile. Now, you may have found different ones, and that's fabulous, but these are some of the ones I found. Now, the next thing we need to do, and we can check this off because we've completed it, is circle 2 ways they are alike. So you find 2 ways, I will find 2 ways. You pause. After you find them, come back and look with me. So I found that real astronauts had to conserve precious fuel and that MMUs were hard to steer. And like them, Sandra Bullock moved deliberately. It was all work and no play. We have completed that task. And you may have found something different, and that is perfectly fine. Now the third task says underline 3 ways they are different. So you pause and look for your 3, and I will look for my 3, and we'll come back and compare. Okay, so I found that George Clooney raced through space using his MMU, when in fact MMUs were much harder to steer. Also, compressed nitrogen is not an efficient fuel source. Therefore, NASA would not have allowed George Clooney, as a real-life astronaut, to frivolously cavort as he did. So we have completed that task. Now, let us move to go back and look at your text. And it says, the first sentence, how would you like to fly unattached through outer space? Unattached. Then it goes on to describe the MMU. And it tells us that it's, so if we go back to our text, we actually already underlined a couple of key points talking about George Clooney racing through space, and NASA never would have allowed him to do so. To preview the questions, what is the meaning of the title of this article? So the meaning of the title. What in the text helped you? So we're going to need some text evidence. 2. According to the technology article, what was inaccurate about how an MMU was shown or used in the movie Gravity? This is the essential part of that question. Number 3. Why do you suppose the author focuses on a Hollywood movie in this piece about technology? And question 4. How did advancing technology mark the end of MMU usage? So now to the questions. I'll do a couple with you, and then you'll do the last two by yourself. Question 1. What is the meaning of the title of this article? A. Effortless. B. Fastened. C. Shuttled. D. Unattached. Now, no longer in use. Now, unattached. We look through A, B, C, and D answer choices. We find that D is unattached. Untethered means unattached. So I went back and found out. It says, what in the text helped you find the answer? The first line of the text states that you may fly through space unattached. I also want to point out that you could get a dictionary and look up the word untethered if you could not go back and find the text evidence. So, question number 2. According to the technology article, what was inaccurate about how an MMU was shown or used in the movie Gravity? A. The one shown was smaller than the actual MMUs were. B. George Clooney was used to traveling too slowly. C. MMUs could not move that fast, nor were they used for pleasure. D. Both astronauts would have used one, as those devices are used by every astronaut today. What in the text helped you answer that question? So, here we go. It's not the one shown was smaller. We did not discuss size. It never said that B, he was moving too slowly. C is a good possibility because it was talking about MMUs not being able to go that fast and that they weren't used for pleasure, listening to music and fooling around. And D, astronauts would have used them as these devices are used today. And we know that this is not the case. They don't use them today. So our answer is C. MMUs did not move that fast. I'm going to say this text states that MMUs used compressed nitrogen as fuel. It was a very precious fuel source. Therefore, astronauts, I'm spelling astronauts wrong. Work slowly and Precisely. Okay, now you go ahead and answer the next two.